Back off. Maya Lawson's voice cut through the low thrum of music inside the bar, steady and firm. Her twin sister Nia sat beside her, keeping her cool, but every muscle in her body was tight with readiness. It was supposed to be a normal Friday night, a drink after a long week. But the second the sisters walked in, they drew the attention of three off-duty cops whose badges were still clipped proudly to their belts, even as the smell of whiskey hung heavy on them. Sergeant Frank Mercer swaggered over first, his frame massive, his bloodshot eyes settling on Maya like she was prey. "Or what, sweetheart?" he smirked, leaning too close. "You gonna make me?" His voice carried, and the nearby chatter faded to silence. Behind them, Officer Tom Braddock slid into position behind Nia, his thick hands gripping the back of her chair like it already belonged to him. "We're just being friendly," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "Don't they teach manners where you girls come from?" The youngest, Officer Eric Malloy, stumbled a little on his feet. His words slurred, his laugh ugly. "Check out those curves," he sneered, shaping an hourglass in the air with his hands. "You two must be twins. Double the chocolate, am I right, Sarge?" A few patrons shifted uneasily. One woman grabbed her purse and slipped out. Carlos Vega, the bartender, froze mid-wipe, his jaw tight. He had seen this before. Everyone had. Nia's fingers tightened around her glass, but she stayed calm. She knew how men like this worked, power drunk, both on booze and on the badge. Maya straightened her back, refusing to shrink under Frank's looming presence. "Last warning," she said, her voice cutting the tension. "Walk away while you still can." Frank dragged a chair over with a long, screeching scrape across the floor and straddled it backward, leaning in until his face nearly touched hers. "Now that's cute. You think you're in charge here?" His smirk widened as he gestured toward his men. "Ladies seem to have forgotten whose town this is." Tom's hand slid from Nia's chair to her shoulders. She froze, her eyes darkening. "Don't touch me," she said quietly, each word like steel. The cops laughed, their voices loud and ugly, and all around them, the bar fell into an even deeper silence. Carlos approached with a tray of empty glasses, his voice steady, though his face was tense. "Gentlemen, maybe we should." "Shut it, Carlos," Frank snapped without even looking at him. "Go back to washing dishes before I decide to check your papers again." Carlos's jaw clenched, but he stepped back, the weight of the threat heavy in the air. Eric stumbled closer, bumping into the table hard enough to slosh their drinks. He leaned in until Nia could smell the whiskey on his breath. "Or what you gonna do about it, beautiful?" His eyes flicked down, lingering on her shorts. "Looking like that, you're basically asking for attention." Maya's hand slipped toward her purse, but Nia caught her eye and gave a small shake of her head. "Not yet." Frank's grin widened. "Got something in that purse you want to share with the class, princess?" "Just my lipstick," Maya replied smoothly. Tom's grip on Nia's shoulders tightened. "You know what your problem is? No respect for authority. But we can fix that, can't we, boys?" Their laughter rang out, crude and ugly. The tension pressed down on the bar like a storm about to break. From the corner, a young man raised his phone, angling it discreetly to capture what was happening. Eric spotted him instantly. He started forward, but Frank whistled sharply. "Later." Frank turned back to the sisters, his smirk now stripped of humor. "Here's what's going to happen. You two are going to apologize for your attitude, buy us a round of drinks, and maybe, if you ask real nice, we'll forget about this little display of disrespect." Maya set her glass down slowly. "Here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to take your hands off my sister, step back, and leave us alone, because right now, you're making a very big mistake." "That sounded like a threat," Frank growled, his voice dropping dangerously low. "Tom, Eric, did you hear a threat?" "Sure did, Sarge," Eric slurred eagerly. "Definitely threatening an officer." Tom agreed, digging his fingers harder into Naya's shoulders. Frank leaned closer, his breath hot and sour. "Now that's a serious offense. Might have to take you ladies downtown, teach you some manners." The laughter that followed was cruel. The sisters exchanged a look, years of silent communication flowing between them. The bar was now silent, but for the pounding of hearts. The rubber band of tension was stretched to its breaking point. "Back up!" Maya's voice cracked through the silence, stronger than before. "You're drunk, and you're making fools of yourselves." Frank's face darkened, the smirk fading into something uglier. "Fools? You come in here dressed like that, shaking what your mama gave you, and we're the fools? He moved fast, too fast for a man that drunk, sliding behind Nia's chair. Have you ever seen cops treat a badge like a free pass to harass women? What would you do if the one they targeted was your sister? What would you do if your sister was the one they laid hands on? Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where our viewers are tuning in from. And if you believe no badge excuses abuse, smash that like button and subscribe to Story Arc, because standing up to corruption starts with telling these stories. The sound echoed like a gunshot, his hand smacking across Nia's backside. The bar froze. Laughter from Frank followed, loud and cruel, while Nia shot to her feet, face burning with fury. You son of a... Maya lunged forward, but Tom's bulk slammed her hard against the wall, his forearm pressing across her collarbone. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. What's the matter? Frank taunted, still looming over Nia. Can't take a compliment from an officer of the law? Nia smacked his hand away, her voice low and shaking with rage. Touch me again, and you'll pull back a stump. Eric giggled like a child, pulling his handcuffs from his belt. The metallic clink seemed to reverberate through the room. Ooh, that's definitely a threat against an officer. Around them, patrons sank deeper into their seats. A couple near the door gathered their things and slipped out. Nobody wanted to intervene. Nobody wanted to be the next target. Tom pressed harder against Maya, his voice a sneer in her ear. Maybe we should take this somewhere more private. Teach you ladies some respect. His free hands slid up into her curls, tangling painfully. See, we could have had a real good time, Frank murmured to Nia, circling her like a shark. His hand darted out, seizing her wrist. He twisted until she gasped. But now you've gone and hurt our feelings. Want me to do the honors, Sarge? Eric asked eagerly, stepping forward with the cuffs raised. Ladies first, Frank said, yanking Nia closer until his lips nearly touched her ear. You don't talk back to cops in my town. The click of steel sealed the moment. The cuffs snapped tight around Nia's wrists, Eric making sure they bit too deep. She stumbled, shoved down to her knees, pain flashing through her as the filthy floor met her skin. Maya's cheek scraped the rough wooden paneling as Tom twisted her arms behind her back, pinning her hard. All that sass, Frank gloated, circling them, means nothing when you're in cuffs. The bar was silent, save for the sisters' ragged breaths and the laughter of three men drunk on whiskey and power. The bar's air grew heavy, every breath thick with fear and humiliation. Nia's knees ached from the sticky floor, while Maya's face pressed hard against the wooden wall, splinters biting her cheek. Frank prowled around them like a vulture, savoring the moment. Such a waste, he muttered, his eyes roaming over them. Could have been a fun night for everyone. Carlos's voice cracked as he tried again. They haven't done anything wrong. Let me call them a cab. Frank spun on him, grabbing him by the collar and slamming him against the bar. One more word, and I'll have this place shut down faster than you can say health code violation. His eyes narrowed, venom in his tone. How many illegals you got working in that kitchen, huh? Carlos backed off, but his apron pocket glowed faintly red. The phone inside was still recording. Frank shoved him away and turned back to the sisters. Time for a ride downtown. Tom yanked Maya from the wall while Eric hauled Nia to her feet. The cuffs dug deeper as they stumbled toward the door, humiliation burning hotter than pain. Through the bar's windows, patrons stared, some worried, most afraid. A woman tried to lift her phone again, but Eric snatched it and hurled it to the floor, glass scattering like broken silence. They shoved the sisters forward, their boots scraping against the hardwood. Nia twisted her wrists, her training screaming for patience. Then she felt it, the weight of her badge case in her pocket. She hooked two fingers around it, inching it free. With a subtle flick, it dropped. The thud echoed across the silent bar. The golden shield caught the dim light, its engraving impossible to mistake. Every head turned. Nia straightened as much as the cuffs allowed, her voice steady, cutting through the room like a blade. Federal Bureau of Investigation. The words hit harder than any punch. Patrons gasped, eyes widening. Phones came out again, this time faster, more confident. Maya shrugged off Tom's loosened grip, standing tall despite the cuffs digging into her skin. Her voice was sharp as ice. You're assaulting federal agents. For the first time all night, the three officers froze. Frank's smirk faltered, his whiskey-fueled bravado cracking. Around them, the balance of power shifted in an instant. The predators had just become prey, and everyone in that bar knew it. The badge glinted where it had landed, the FBI seal shining unmistakably in the dim light. The room seemed to stop breathing. Frank's eyes flicked down, then back up, his smirk faltering. For the first time, doubt crept across his face. "You're assaulting federal agents," Maya repeated, her voice steady, loud enough for every corner of the bar to hear. Tom's hands fell slack from Maya's arms. Eric's drunken grin slipped into panic. "Sarge," he muttered, his voice shaking. Carlos stepped forward, his phone already recording from his apron pocket. "You heard them. Everyone here heard them. You laid hands on FBI agents." Frank tried to recover, his laugh forced and ugly. He kicked at the badge case, sending it skittering across the floor. "That little card don't mean a thing here. This is my town, my rules." But his words carried no weight now. The crowd wasn't afraid anymore. A woman who had been silent all night stood up, her phone raised high. "I got it all on video," she said firmly, her voice ringing. "Every word, every touch." Others followed. "So do I. Me too." Red lights blinked across the room as patrons who once stared into their drinks now stood, united, documenting the scene. Eric staggered back, pale. "They can't." "They already have," Nia cut him off, her eyes burning. "Every second of this is evidence." The wail of sirens pierced the night outside. Red and blue lights strobed through the windows. The drunken laughter that had filled the bar earlier was gone, replaced by the unmistakable sound of squad cars screeching to a halt. The front doors slammed open. On-duty officers and federal agents stormed inside, weapons drawn, eyes locked on the three men. "Sergeant Frank Mercer, officers Tom Braddock and Eric Malloy," one agent barked. "You're under arrest for assaulting federal agents, unlawful detention, and abuse of authority." For the first time, Frank's swagger collapsed. His own cuffs were slapped around his wrists, tighter than he'd ever worn them on another. Eric whimpered as two agents pinned him to the ground. Tom's face went pale as he was hauled toward the exit, his broken power replaced with shame. The crowd erupted, not in fear, but in relief. Phones captured every second as the same men who had strutted into the bar with arrogance were dragged out in disgrace. Maya and Nia stood tall, their heads high despite the bruises. The power dynamic had flipped completely. The predators left in chains, the victims stood victorious. If you believe no one is above the law and no one is beneath justice, smash that like button and subscribe to Story Arc, because standing tall against corruption is how change begins.